welcome with some delay due to technical difficulties to our webinar on the BA program in English Language and Culture. So what I was saying previously when you couldn't hear me was my name is Dr. Nienke de Haas. I teach linguistics courses in the English program, and this is our student Zoe Optenberg. And she just graduated from our program. She'll be picking up her diploma in a few weeks' time. But she has very recent experience of the program. And on our chat, you will have been in touch with our current student, Imke. So this is what she looks like in the bottom picture. She's a second-year student in our program. So do ask us and her any questions that you have, and we'll try to answer them to the best of our ability. So in this webinar, we'll talk you through the basics of our program. So that's something that some of you have already been asking about, and yes, we'll cover that, and we'll also be talking about potential career opportunities with a BA degree in English. So those of you who were wondering about that, we've got you covered. And towards the end of the session is when we'll try to actually cover individual questions that Imke will put through to us if she can't answer them. So let's take it away. So our program in a nutshell. So it's a 3-year program. When you graduate from a program, you will have a bachelor degree, Bachelor of Arts degree. So one of the main aims of our program is for you to become a near native speaker of English, and the other is to really become an academic and a scholar of English language and culture. So let me talk you through those two aspects. The first one, about becoming a near native speaker of English. Actually, some people come in and are already native speakers of English, like Zoe.
Yes.
Right? So what we aim for most of our students is for them to become near native, so as close as possible, as close as makes no difference. And the idea is that you become very fluent and very proficient in writing and speaking, and listening. So the level that we aim for is really high. The level that we like to see in our students when they start off is also already quite high, because originally our program was developed for students from the Netherlands. They already are usually quite fluent in English. That you wouldn't normally mistake them for native speakers, but they are really quite fluent. They know how to express themselves. So the starting proficiency level that we ask for is what is called the B2 level in the Common European Framework of Reference, which means essentially that you're already quite fluent and know how to express yourself in English. This is something that you can look up, by the way. There's a lot of information about what this entails online. So, but since we're now opening up our program to international students, and we in fact did that last year, and also there have always been some students who are bilingual in Dutch and English. So what is it like for a native speaker of English to come into our program?
Well, as a native speaker, you usually know how to speak and how to write and stuff like that. But I learned specifically to write at a higher level, at an academic level, of course. And I learned not just how to do things, but why they occur this way, and how the language is actually built up. It's a more deeper understanding of the English language.
Yeah, and now you can actually explain the rules rather than just use the right forms in English. Yeah, and I think learning more about how to actually describe the language and learning more about how that works, that's part of linguistics. So if you want to be an English teacher like Zoe wants to be, I think that's really useful knowledge. But also if you want to find out more about how language works in general, this is really crucial, right? So, and actually that's a link to the next aspect of our program, which is actually much more important, right? Becoming a near native speaker of English is not the main goal of our program. The main goal is actually for students to become really knowledgeable about English language and culture, and also good researchers, right? So the point is for you to become an academic. So in our linguistics courses, you learn about how language works and how the English language works specifically. You also learn about English literature, both older literature and newer literature. And you learn about the traditions and cultures of English-speaking countries, right? And the main goal really of our program is to give you a general understanding of these things, but also to teach you how to do research on these topics. So that's really the main point. And of course, even as a native speaker, when you're fresh out of secondary school, you don't know probably a whole lot about how to do research on linguistics and how to write linguistics papers, or even how to write academic essays analyzing aspects of literature. Right, so that's something that is worthwhile, I think, for anyone, native speaker or non-native speaker. Okay, so let's move on to what is really special about our program in Utrecht. So one of the things you need to bear in mind is the way our program is organized. So our students have 2 short intensive courses at a time. We have 4 blocks in a year. So each block has 7 teaching weeks and then followed by 2 exam weeks. So these are really short blocks, right? So we don't work in semesters where you have longer courses. We have basically 4 blocks, which is like 2 half semesters, where you dive into a topic, and then after just over 2 months, you come out the other end and you move on to a new topic. Now, in the first year, you get an overview of lots of different things, and based on that, you can choose your courses for the next years, so you can revisit topics that you're really interested in. Okay, another point that's really special about us, and this is really my favorite, this is, I think, what really makes our program great, that's that you always learn skills in the context of literature and culture and linguistics, right? So whenever you learn speaking skills and writing skills and communication skills and research skills in the context of those topics, right? So you learn academic English by discussing interesting academic topics. You learn how to do research and writing on interesting topics as well. So that's much more interesting than what I did when I was an undergrad, which is I learned how to write an academic essay about a general topic, which I could come up with myself, but wasn't really interested in. And I think I would like our way of doing things much more, right? So if you're already interested in English literature and culture and language, you actually get to write about those things and you don't need to bother with other things. The other nice thing about this is that since the research traditions of linguistics and literary scholarship and cultural scholarship are so different, we really teach you how to do research and writing in those 2 different traditions. And you can then choose to pick one or the other to specialize in, but you will have already learned how to adapt to 2 really different cultures and how to communicate in them. And that will help make you more flexible later on. So when you enter the job market, you'll be able to really look at what the people around you expect and how things work in your organization and then adapt to that, right? So this will make you more flexible. And finally, doing research starts in year 1. In block 1, in the Writers Lab course, you learn how to do research on literature and how to actually properly write about that. So there's no waiting until your level of English is high enough. You dive right in. So I really like that. Okay, so I've mentioned the Writers Lab. So across year 1, you will get these 8 courses. So there's 4 literature courses and 4 linguistics courses. So the linguistics ones are at the top. And the literature ones are at the bottom. So I mentioned the Writers Lab. Let's just continue with that. The Writers Lab is really a course that has a bit of an overview of English literature, and you learn how to do research on it, right? So there's a bit of poetry, there's a bit of literary fiction, and at the end of this course, you learn how to write an academic essay, really analyzing literature and bringing theory in with it as well. And that essay writing skill is something you will keep using throughout all of your literature courses. The rest of the year is really organized chronologically. So in block 2, there's the From Bede to the Bard course with basically medieval English literature and also Renaissance literature. So you move all the way from Beowulf to Shakespeare in that course. Then in block 3, From Milton to the Millennium, which basically picks up where From Bede to the Bard left off and then moves you into the present time. And in block 4, we move to North America with Civil War to Civil Rights, which is about American literature, but also very much culture between the 1860s and 1960s. So a period of great social upheaval, great changes, and then very interesting to look at, I think. Then the linguistics courses. So it starts with the sound lab. If you're a non-native speaker, this is where you train with, where you train in the language lab to really improve your accent. And being in the language lab as a student, you basically put headphones on, listen to recordings of native speakers, then imitate them and record yourself imitating them. And then you listen back and you compare your own speech to the native speaker's speech, and then try to get closer to what the native speakers do, right? And this is a really big confrontation. Zoe did this even though she didn't have to.
I did it in the wrong accent as well.
So she actually started training for British English. And you can actually choose between General American, so a General American English accent, and a non-regional pronunciation or RP accent. So basically kind of posh British English, the way I speak. But you can choose, it's up to your own preferences. But yeah, that takes some getting used to, I think, being in the language lab, but it really does help improve your accent quite fast. And if you're a native speaker, you don't need to do that, but there's still plenty of interesting stuff for you in this course, because in this course, you also learn about how speech sounds work. Right? So if I say ah or eh, what is different about my mouth, right? How does that work? And you learn something about the theory behind that. Plus, there's lots of interesting class discussions about topics related to phonetics, the study of speech sounds. So yeah, no need to get bored as a native speaker, I think. So in block 2, there's more language lab training, but also prescribing and describing English focuses on how basically the way linguists look at language is all about describing it, right? Just finding out what happens. What do native speakers do? What do learners of a language do? What do speakers of different varieties and dialects of English do? That's describing English. We also focus on prescribing English, right? Part of that is the language lab training, where we make sure that everybody's accent is on point. Plus, we focus on grammar. So how do you use proper grammar in written academic English, right? Because doing that will help you get taken seriously by your readers. Even though as a linguist, I don't think you're people who write with better grammar are brighter or anything. That's not how it works. But your readers may not have that filter, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a really interesting course because it unites those two different perspectives. And in addition to looking at the grammar from a prescriptive perspective, you also look at language variation, including grammatical variation. So for instance, between American and British English, but also between various varieties, both within England, within the US, and in places like Australia, India, South Africa, right? And you also learn how to distinguish those accents of English. Then moving on to block 3, Foundations of English Linguistics. This is a more theoretical course where you learn about phonology, the theory behind speech sounds, and how they're organized in a language. and syntax, which is what I teach. And this is basically about sentence structure, right? How are sentences built up? And we use a particular model that is big in linguistics, which we use to kind of try and understand what's going on in syntax. And this involves drawing trees, which are structures. So this is more of a puzzle kind of linguistics. And then in block 4, there's language development across a lifespan, which is all about language acquisition. So how do children learn a language? How do older speakers learn a second language? And also how do, for instance, really old bilingual speakers start losing their languages as well? So yeah, and also throughout these courses from blocks 2 to 4, you learn how to write about linguistics. So we build this up in little steps, and by the end of block 4, you actually write a complete research paper together with 1 or 2 classmates. You go out, you actually carry out research and write the whole paper. So that sets you up with a really good basis for writing in linguistics. So Zoe, you told me before what your favorite course was in year 1, but I haven't actually remembered. So what was it?
Yeah, because I am a linguist. I choose to go through that path. And I really enjoyed prescribing and describing English because it really showed me the different varieties of English that do exist that I wasn't aware of. So it really opened up the world of English to me. Of course, I enjoyed language development across lifespan because I want to be a teacher. So learning how someone learns a language, especially as a second language, was very interesting. And then within literature, as someone who never really enjoyed reading or learning about literature, it has a very easy step system that'll gradually get you into it. You have amazing teachers that'll try to get you to live the lit, as Kat would say. Yeah,
really?
Yeah, that's cool. She said that. And there's such a huge variety of things to read. There should be something in there that you enjoy. And for me, that was way at the end, the American literature and culture. Yeah, I enjoyed reading about those stories the most. It was more contemporary, and that's what I found my niche within literature.
Right.
So there's something for everybody.
By the way, so Zoe started off being interested in the language, but most people who come into our program actually are more interested in literature. So they come in for the literature, and then sometimes along the way they discover that they really like linguistics as well. So it could go both ways.
Yeah.
Right. So if you do find out that you're interested primarily in linguistics or in literature, what do you do next? Well, you actually get to choose a lot of courses in years 2 and 3. So you need to choose one specialization of 4 English courses, which are thematically linked. And in addition to that, you need to choose a second package, which could either be a second English specialization or a minor consisting of 4 courses from outside of our program, or you could study abroad for half a year or a whole year, right? In addition to that, you can choose extra courses or an internship in the elective courses, and you choose your final project. So you get to write a thesis on a topic of your own choosing, usually sometime in year 3. Right, so those are the options. So what I really want to tell you about next is which specializations we offer, because those are actually most of the courses that we offer. So the first specialization is called Language Matters. That's the one that I teach on. It starts with, based on which year you were in, either language history of the British Isles or Old English. So Old English being English spoken between 450 and 1066 approximately, so really old English, right? The second course is Prosody and Communication, which is about intonation and rhythm in language, and also about differences between English and other languages in intonation and rhythm. The third course is the acquisition of English, which builds on the knowledge you've gained in language development across the lifespan. So it really focuses on first language acquisition of English, so by young children, and second language acquisition by maybe people like you and me, right? How does that work? And you learn how to set up a really good research proposal about that in this course as well. And the final course, that's the one I teach on form, meaning, and use. Form in here basically means syntax, so this builds on the Foundations of English Linguistics course in that sense. Meaning means semantics here, so basically the literal meaning of words and phrases and sentences. And then use is actually also about meaning a little bit. What do words, phrases, sentences mean in context? So if I ask someone, can you open the window? I want them to open the window. I'm not actually interested in the literal meaning, which is, are you able to open the window, right? So this is something that native speakers and non-native speakers do all the time. They don't think about it, but it does actually work in really interesting ways. Okay, the second specialization is states of literature. And this looks at literature from a mainly historical perspective. So it starts with the English lyric. So lyrics in this sense are basically first-person poetry, but they could be song lyrics as well. And there's a lot of older and newer lyrics in this course, so it spans centuries. Then the second course is Irish literature from 1850 to the present. And this really looks at Irish literature in the context of Irish culture, right? And Zoe actually took this course, so she knows this better than I do. Then Cities and Countries, English Drama and Poetry from 1580 to 1818. This focuses on drama and poetry from this period, because this period really sees the Industrial Revolution fold out. So yeah, again, lots of change in society, lots of change reflected in literature. And then Great Medieval Heroes looks at heroes like King Arthur, Robin Hood, and a bunch of other ones that I always forget, but it's a really popular course. So intertextuality, third specialization, looks at links between literature and other forms of literature or the outside world. So the Shakespeare industry looks at how Shakespeare plays have been adapted, or how they're being adapted now, but they were written 400 years ago. So what's happened? And there are big differences, right? Adapting to the English novel does something similar, but specifically with English novels. So if you look at a Pride and Prejudice adaptation from 1948 versus 2005, they're very different, and the differences tell you something about the time in which the adaptations were made, right? Then there's This American Life, which is about gender and media in contemporary American literature. This is probably also something that Zoe would really have enjoyed. And then the fourth option is actually one of two options. If you know Dutch, then you can take the English-Dutch translation course. If you don't, or if you don't want to, you can take the creative writing course. And this is actually unique within the Netherlands, or at least within English programs in the Netherlands. So you can actually write literature yourself, and you also study different genres of literature in the same course from an academic perspective. Okay, I skipped one. Shouldn't skip that. The fourth specialization is the social life of English. There's a bit of literature and a bit of linguistics in here. So the social linguistics of English looks at how basically social varieties of English, so different dialects, different ways of speaking for different classes in the same place. And then language and identity is about how individual speakers use language to bring out different parts of their identity, of their personality, like speaking dialect when you're in your village versus speaking standard language when you're at university. Then there's life writing in English, which focuses on how people have used writing about their own lives to really bring out social issues. And finally, there's English in Europe and Asia, which looks at how people look differently at English in different countries. So this is about how English is taught in various countries, but also about how artists from various countries use English in their song lyrics, for instance. Okay, we need to move on a little bit. So if you want extra challenges, you can. It is actually possible to take 2 BA programs at the same time. So for instance, you could combine English with a bachelor program in linguistics, which is also taught in English. And then you could obtain 2 degrees within 3 to 4 years. Okay, so moving on to Zoe. What is it like to be a student here?
Well, first of all, you have to look at your course load. That's what I'm kind of going to talk about. Seeing that from your first year starting on, it is a full-time program, so you have 40 hours per week and 2 courses per block. There's 4 blocks within the year. So you should think about working on 1 course for 20 hours every week, which means that there was couple of contact. Yes, so 6 hours of classes per course. So that would leave 14 hours in the week for self-study. Just keep that in mind when making your schedule and planning your time. Because there's 1 lecture in your first year that will be with the entire first years of English language and culture. And then you split up into smaller seminar groups of 20 to 25 students. That's where you really find your group and your friends and people you know for the rest of your life. And that's how your week would look every time. So 1 lecture, 2 seminars, and then the rest is self-study.
Yeah, but then times 2, right? Because
per course. Sorry, times 2. Ha.
Yeah, so overall you'd be looking at up to 40 hours of work, study work per week.
And not all of them is monitored by a teacher. No. So it's up to you. Be very independent. And then, of course, when you're done with all the studying, you, of course, have all the fun things about student life. So first of all, if you would come to study in Utrecht, you'll be studying in Utrecht. The program of English language and culture is situated within the city center, which is very special because in between classes or after class, you can take a stroll through the beautiful city that is Utrecht. In the summer, you can hang out besides the canals, and you can always enjoy beautiful views and all the culture that it has to offer. Besides that, we have our own study association officially. I don't think the terminology will matter as much to you guys, but it is a association that is attached to the study of English language and culture.
Yeah, so to the program.
Mm-hmm.
It's independent, but it's to our students.
So whenever you can, you become a student of English language and culture, you can become a member of Albion. You can become a full member or simply a friend of Albion if you're only here for a shorter amount of time. And we organize fun events. It's the possibility to meet new people. We also organize some more academic focused events, such as a pub lecture or thesis workshops, study afternoons, that kind of thing. But we also go for the fun things, such as our monthly drinks. We also have a shack in the university where you can just hang in between hours. And then there's another society, the Drama Society of Suds, that you can always join, where they organize plays, they write them themselves, or they take applications for people to write plays, and then they actually perform them.
Yeah, so it's really cool to watch plays put up entirely by students. They're really creative very often. It's quite nice. Okay, we need to move on a little bit. So let's move on to careers. So what can you actually do with a BA in English? Well, you can do quite a lot. So after the BA degree, most people will move on to a master's degree, 85% of the students so far. So there are 1-year master programs that you could do here at Utrecht, like Literature Today and Intercultural Communication. There's also 2-year master programs like linguistics, gender and ethnicity, ancient medieval and Renaissance study, and comparative literature studies. So if you really like Utrecht and you want to stay here, there are plenty of options afterwards. After that, you should basically not think about our BA program as something that will prepare you for one specific job, because it doesn't, but it does give you a whole lot of communication skills, analytical skills, research skills, on top of all of your knowledge about language, linguistics, literature, and culture, right? So you could become a teacher or a translator, but you could also do lots of less obvious things. So students of ours have moved on to IT, management, research, consultancy, journalism, diplomacy, NGOs, arts and museums. The options are almost endless, right? And what you need to really think about is, okay, what do you like to do? And based on the courses that you take, the hobbies that you have, you could go into lots of different fields, and people do, right? So use your courses and your internships and your master's program to find your direction. And don't worry about finding a job, because there are lots and lots of options. Our graduates usually do quite well. Okay, so wrapping up, you need to find out and think about, is this the right program for you, right? So you need to come in with quite a high level of English, B2 level, and we aim to go even higher, right? There's a lot of personal freedom and responsibility to choose in this program. So you need to be willing to actually go out, think about what you want to do and choose that. Having said that, there's also a lot of personal supervision here. Every first-year student and also every senior student has a tutor, a teacher like me, that gets to know them. And that kind of keeps track of how you're doing. Plus, we have academic advisors for further questions and also further guidance. Most classes are taught in small groups, the seminar classes, so you don't need to feel lost in a large sea of students. You will actually get to know a lot of people quite well. So there's a nice sense of social cohesion for most students here. Plus, if you join Albion, there's more of that, and they can provide a really good network for like keeping track of things. Okay, so if you are into the idea of taking challenging, short, intensive courses, you like the subjects and courses that we teach, then this may well be the program for you. So you can actually find more information online at students.uu.nl/everything that's on the screen. So come back to this screen, the recording will be online later on, and find more details there. Okay, so if you want to know more, we do have a student for a day program. So if you have the time to come to Utrecht, there will be a few days in November and December when you can actually join our students during actual classes and see what it's like. You can sign up for that online where you found this. And if you can't make it then, you can also always approach Albion and ask them to hook you up with a student. Okay. So you need to bear in mind that if you want to apply for this program, if you're an EU resident, the deadline is the 1st of May, so you have some time left. If you're a non-EU resident, then the deadline is the 1st of April, so you have a little less time, right? So do bear that in mind. If you're a Dutch resident, you will also need to participate in matching days in April and June, which are days when you basically get some sample homework classes and a sample exam to help you find out whether the program suits you. Okay, and that's it for our general presentation. So let's move on to the Q&A. Don't have too much time for questions, but we do have one question here from Dia, who says, I was wondering what job opportunities you have after obtaining your degree in English language and culture. I think we just covered that. Let's see if there are other questions as well. So one more. Did we miss anything, I think? Oh, there's one good one. If you fail a course, in the Netherlands, the idea is usually you can just take the course again the next year. So this may slow you down, right? It may then not be possible to graduate within 3 years, but you can definitely try again. And also, if you have to, it takes some time to actually fail a course, because usually if you fail one exam, there are several exam opportunities within one course. So you can compensate, and you can also resit a failed exam. And then if you don't make it through the reset, you still fail, then you need to take the course again the next year. This does happen, but it's not the normal course of things. So don't worry if you fail one course, there's no need to take the whole year again.
You need to pass 6.
Oh, and good point. You need to pass 6 out of 8 courses in the first year to be allowed to stay in the program. So yeah, that's important too. Okay, and that's all we had time for today. So thank you for being here. Have a lovely day, and we hope to see you in Utrecht.